The chandelier light shimmered across crystal and marble when Lila signed her first words, and the room went silent. No one expected the shy waitress to speak the language of secrets, not even the billionaire whose mother she was greeting, or the ex-fiancé whose empire was built on her stolen genius. When she smiled that night, she wasn't serving dinner. She was stepping into the light. The chandelier light fractured across marble floors like spilled diamonds, illuminating the quiet grace of La Mirabelle. Lila Rowe adjusted her crisp black uniform for the third time, her trembling hands betraying the calm she'd practiced to perfection. But shadows don't stay silent forever. That night, hers was about to step into the light. "Table 9 needs their wine topped up," barked Clarice, the head waitress, without looking up from her order pad. "And try not to spill anything on Mr. Voss tonight. He's already sent back the air conditioning." Lila nodded, gathering the bottle of Chateau Velmont, a vintage worth more than her month's rent. Elias Voss. Even his name dripped power, the kind of man whose presence made people lower their eyes. She'd served him for months, yet he'd never once seen her, not really. Around her, the dining room pulsed with laughter and privilege, the kind of world she'd once belonged to before everything had been taken. And then, his voice cut through the hum like polished steel. "Excuse me," sharp, controlled, dangerous. Lila turned, and there he was, taller than she remembered, eyes the cold silver of ambition. "Your wine," she murmured, holding the bottle steady. "Not for me," he said, gesturing to the woman behind him. "For my mother. She's been trying to get your attention." The elegant woman smiled, soft, silver-haired, her hands moving with deliberate grace. Lila froze for a heartbeat, then instinct took over. She set the bottle aside and lifted her hands. "Good evening," she signed, her movements smooth, fluid, alive. "How may I help you?" A ripple passed through the room. The billionaire's mother beamed, her fingers dancing. "Oh, how wonderful," her gestures said. "No one ever bothers to speak to me properly." For the first time all night, Lila smiled, genuinely. "It's my pleasure," she signed back, her heart opening in a way it hadn't in years. Behind her, the restaurant had fallen silent. But in that stillness, Lila didn't notice the way Elias Voss was staring at her, like he'd just recognized a ghost from a life he was never meant to see. The moment his hand touched hers, something shifted. The mask she'd worn for years cracked, and the man she feared most suddenly became the one who saw her too clearly. In that instant between fear and recognition, the waitress who'd spent her life pretending to disappear became someone impossible to ignore. Because once Elias Voss decided to uncover her truth, there would be no hiding who Lila Rowe really was, or what she was running from. The touch came out of nowhere, firm, unexpected, and electricity raced through Lila's veins. She looked down at his hand wrapped around her wrist, his skin immaculate, the gold watch glinting beneath the low restaurant lights. Not a trace of labor, not a single scar, just power, polished and practiced. When she finally met his gaze again, Elias Voss's eyes weren't cold anymore. They were searching, almost human. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quieter now, carrying something dangerously close to regret. "That was harsh." Lila's throat tightened. "Your mother is lovely," she murmured, forcing steadiness she didn't feel. "She told me about her trip to Paris. She likes you." Elias released her wrist, but didn't step back. "She doesn't like many people," he said. Maybe because most people don't take the time to actually listen. The edge in Lila's voice surprised even her. Maybe most people only listen to themselves. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, that flicker of amusement in his eyes. You think I don't listen? I think, she said carefully, you're used to people telling you what you want to hear. And then he smiled. Not the kind of smile that belonged in press photos or board meetings, but something real, something that disarmed her entirely. You're probably right, he admitted, but you never answered my question. Where did you study? Lila froze. The world around her seemed to shrink. The murmuring tables, the clinking glasses, the soft piano in the corner, all fading into a hollow echo. Across the room, Mrs. Voss was watching, her eyes full of knowing amusement, as if she could already see the truth trembling at the edge of Lila's lips. Columbia, Lila whispered finally, the name falling from her mouth like a secret escaping. I studied at Columbia. Elias's expression shifted, surprise, confusion, and something that almost looked like respect. Columbia, he repeated softly. That's impressive. What made you change careers? The question sliced through her, clean and cruel. How could she explain that she hadn't changed anything, that everything had been stolen from her by the man she'd once loved? So she smiled, the kind of fragile smile that kept the world from asking too much. Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. Elias tilted his head, studying her. No, he said quietly. I suppose it doesn't. From behind him, Mrs. Voss signed something with a mischievous grin. Lila's heart lifted and sank at the same time. What did she say? Elias asked. She said you work too hard, Lila lied. His smirk deepened. That's not all she said. She also said you should eat more vegetables. The laugh that escaped him was so genuine, it turned heads across the dining room. My mother did not say that. How would you know? Lila countered, her eyes soft but teasing. You don't speak sign language. No, he admitted, but I know her sense of humor. And judging by the way you're blushing, she said something designed to embarrass one of us. Lila looked away, flustered. She thinks you should meet more interesting people. Does she? His gaze didn't waver. And what do you think? Am I meeting interesting people tonight? The air between them shifted, slow, charged, unspoken. Standing that close, Lila could smell the faint scent of his cologne, quiet wealth and danger. The man was everything she should avoid, and yet her pulse betrayed her. I think, she said softly, you're used to being surrounded by people who want something from you, and I don't. The words hit him harder than she'd intended. His eyes softened, the kind of look that saw too much. Then what do you want? He asked. For you to let me do my job, she whispered, glancing toward the hostess stand where her manager was pretending not to watch. Elias finally stepped back, his presence still wrapped around her like gravity. Of course, he said smoothly, but this conversation isn't over. Her pulse jumped. Sir, next week, he interrupted gently. Same table. It wasn't a question, it was a promise. As she walked away, she could feel his gaze following her, not predatory, not cruel, but curious, dangerous in its curiosity. Mrs. Voss caught her eye as she passed and signed, "He likes you." Lila stumbled just slightly, and the sound of Elias Voss's low laugh followed her across the marble floor, the sound of a man who'd found something or someone he didn't intend to let go. When he walked away that night, she thought the danger had passed, but his parting words were the sound of a fuse catching fire. The man who once looked right through her was now looking into her, peeling back the life she'd built on silence and shadows. Because once Elias Voss said the word Paris, Lila Rowe knew her past was no longer buried. It was hunting her. As Lila watched Elias guide his mother toward the exit, a cold certainty took hold in her chest. The mask she'd worn so carefully for 2 years had shattered. The man wasn't just intrigued anymore, he was investigating. His final word still echoed in her mind, sharp as glass. Paris. Her hands trembled as she counted her tips, the worn bills slipping through her fingers. How could he have known? She had buried Paris beneath layers of new names and low paychecks, erased the woman who'd once negotiated million-dollar contracts from glass towers overlooking the Seine. "You okay, sweetheart?" Clarice's voice broke through her thoughts. The older woman stood beside her, sharp eyes soft with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Lila lied, stuffing the crumpled cash into her purse. "Just tired," Clarice smirked. "That Voss guy had you rattled. What was all that hand-waving about?" "His mother's deaf," Lila said quickly. She was complimenting the chef. Clarice raised a brow. "Since when do you know sign language?" Lila forced a small smile, hoping her voice didn't crack. "Picked up a few things in college. Nothing special." The disbelief in Clarice's expression was gentle but clear. Still, she let it go, though her tone turned knowing. "Whatever you did, you made an impression." He left a $200 tip. Lila froze. $200? For a 30-minute dinner. Clarice's grin widened, half envy, half warning. Men like him don't tip that way unless they plan on coming back for more than just the salmon. The implication made Lila's stomach twist. "It's not like that," she murmured. Clarice's look softened, but her voice dropped to something heavy with experience. "Honey, I've worked this business 20 years. It's always like that, just be careful. Guys with that kind of money don't play by the same rules as the rest of us." Lila nodded, but the warning came too late. The horses had already left the barn, and Elias Voss wasn't chasing her for romance. He was after her secrets, and that was far more dangerous. The restaurant had long emptied, but Elias Voss remained at his table, the untouched glass of wine catching the light like liquid memory. He told himself he was reviewing quarterly reports, but the numbers blurred into the shape of her hands, precise, elegant, unshaken, even when the world had paused to watch her sign. His mother hadn't stopped smiling all evening. That girl, she'd signed before leaving, sees people. It was such a simple phrase. Yet for a man who had spent his life surrounded by people who only saw his title, it unsettled him. Back in his car, Manhattan gleamed cold and perfect, but something in him felt disordered. He couldn't stop replaying her words. Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. By the time he reached his penthouse, the decision was already made. He opened his laptop, pulled up Le Mirabelle's staff directory, and found her name. Lila Rowe. Beneath her name were the quiet credentials of someone who had once lived an entirely different life. Multilingual, double degree, graduate of a school that didn't belong on a restaurant roster. 4 languages, financial law. A resume buried under a waitress's uniform. He shouldn't have typed it into a search engine. He shouldn't have wanted to know more, but restraint had never been one of his virtues. One article, one photo, one headline from years ago. Pinnacle Financial's promising prodigy leaves firm amid scandal. Elias leaned back, pulse steady, but his thoughts anything but. "You're not invisible anymore, Miss Rowe," he murmured, and by morning he'd already planned where to find her. Morning arrived gray and heavy, like a city holding its breath. Lila dressed slowly. Same uniform this time, same hair and makeup. The noise of the street rose through her window, ordinary and cruel in its normalcy. Somewhere out there, Elias Voss was probably already in motion, and she couldn't decide if that terrified her or gave her strength. She took a breath, brushed a speck of dust from her sleeve, and stepped outside, toward work again. At work, the reservation book at La Mirabelle carried a familiar name. Voss E. Table 4. One guest, Clarice noticed first. "He's back again?" she muttered, scanning the list. "Guess last night's spectacle didn't scare him off." Lila kept her eyes on the silverware she was polishing. "Maybe he liked the food," she said. But her pulse betrayed her, that small traitorous flutter that came whenever the past and future tried to share the same breath. By noon, the restaurant hummed with lunchtime chatter, and then the door opened. He entered without entourage, without performance. Just a man in daylight, sharper somehow, not looking for luxury, but for someone. Their eyes met across the dining room, a brief, uninvited recognition. Lila turned away first, pretending to study a wine list, but the moment clung like perfume. That night, she told herself it meant nothing, just a customer, another day. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that someone had seen her. When the lunch rush ended, Lila slipped into the back to roll silverware, the noise of the kitchen fading into its usual hum. Clarice appeared in the doorway, holding an envelope. "This came for you," she said, smirking. "From the man at table 4. Lila hesitated before taking it. The paper was heavy, embossed, not the kind of thing meant for hands like hers. Inside, a single line in neat handwriting. "If curiosity ever outweighs caution, I'll be at the cafe across the street. Tomorrow, noon. E.V." She almost laughed at the arrogance, the presumption. But the truth was, she'd been thinking of him too. She tore the note in half, then, after a moment, smoothed the pieces together again and slipped them into her pocket. She told herself she wouldn't go. But the next morning, Elias Voss looked different in daylight. Less untouchable, but no less dangerous. "You found me," he said, standing to offer her a cup. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted, accepting it with shaking hands. The coffee smelled rich, not the cheap kind she'd grown used to, but something indulgent, nostalgic. "But you did," he said, studying her carefully. "Why?" Lila hesitated. Every instinct urged her to lie. Instead, the truth slipped out, quiet, unguarded. "Because I'm tired of running from my past." Something softened in his expression. "Are you running from something specific, or just running?" She forced a small laugh. "What makes you think I'm running at all?" Elias tilted his head, eyes narrowing with an almost gentle precision. "You're 24, with a Columbia education. You speak 4 languages. You know fine wine. And yesterday, you corrected my French under your breath." His smile curved, faint but knowing. Either you're running from something, or you're researching a very convincing role. Lila held his gaze, calm on the surface, chaos underneath. Because the truth was, she wasn't playing a role. She was living on borrowed time. The moment she spoke his name, the air between them fractured. And the man she feared most became the bridge between her past and her destruction. Every secret she'd buried came clawing back when Lila Rowe realized the man sitting beside her wasn't just curious about her story. He was in business with her enemy. Because when Elias Voss said Nathan Chen's name out loud, Lila knew the past hadn't found her by chance. It had been sent. Lila nearly choked on her coffee. "You heard that?" Elias's voice was calm, almost amused. I hear everything. Occupational hazard of surviving in business. You learn to notice what others miss. He settled back on the library steps, sunlight brushing across his jawline as he gestured for her to sit. So what's your story? Bad breakup? Family scandal? Student debt the size of a national economy? The words were light, teasing, but his eyes were sharp. He wasn't fishing for gossip. He was testing the current beneath her calm, giving her the chance to spin her version of the truth before he found it himself. All of the above, Lila said finally, lowering herself beside him. Not close enough for comfort, but close enough to feel the pull of his curiosity. Plus a touch of creative accounting from someone I trusted. Someone stole from you, he said quietly. It wasn't a question, and that somehow loosened the knot in her chest. No judgment, no pity, just fact. Someone stole everything from me, she whispered. My work, my name, my future. I'm not running from debt, Elias. I'm running from the man who destroyed my life and convinced the world I deserved it. Silence fell between them, heavy and alive. Elias stared down at the coffee cup in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, dangerous. Nathan Chen? The sound of the name made her hands go numb. The cup slipped, shattering against the stone steps, spilling coffee like blood. How do you— Because I know him, Elias said. Very well? The world tilted. Lila grabbed his arm without thinking, her nails digging into the cashmere sleeve. You know him? How? He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. He's my business partner. We're about to sign the biggest deal of our careers. The words hit like gunfire. Of course, Nathan would find a way to re-enter her life, not through threats, but through charm, through proximity, through Elias. This is a setup, she breathed, stumbling to her feet. All of it, the restaurant, your mother, you showing up. He sent you no. Elias caught her wrist, not harshly, but with enough force to stop her from fleeing. Lila, I swear to you, Nathan has no idea I'm here. Whatever he did to you, this is separate. This is me. I don't believe you. Then let me prove it. He pulled out his phone, scrolling until the screen glowed with a name that made her stomach twist. I'm calling him right now. You'll hear his reaction yourself. Elias, don't. But he'd already pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Elias, came the smooth, confident voice that once whispered promises in her ear. Perfect timing. I was just reviewing the merger terms. Everything looks— Nathan, Elias interrupted, tone sharp. Quick question. Met someone yesterday who says she knows you. Lila Rowe, Columbia grad, finance background silence. Then too smooth, too quick. Lila Rowe? Doesn't ring a bell, should it? The lie sliced through her like ice. 2 years of her life reduced to nothing. 2 years of building dreams beside him, erased in a single breath. Maybe I misunderstood, Elias said evenly, his gaze locked on her. She seemed sure she knew you. Said you worked together? A pause. Then that same charming tone she'd once believed in. You know how it is, Elias. So many business school faces, maybe a study group or two. Can't place her. Lila let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. A study group, 3 years of partnership, 2 years of engagement, and now she was a stranger. Well, Elias said finally, voice like iron wrapped in silk. If you remember anything, let me know. We'll talk later. Nathan's final words slithered through the speaker like poison. Be careful, Elias. People love to fake connections with successful men. You'd be surprised what they'll do to get close. The call ended, leaving the two of them in stunned silence. Fake connections, Lila murmured, numb. That's what our engagement was? A fake connection? Elias stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. You were engaged to Nathan Chen for 2 years? We were partners for 3 years before that, she said flatly. Pinnacle Financial was our company. My algorithms, my clients, my designs. He didn't just steal it. He made the world believe I was the thief. Elias's jaw clenched. The charges didn't stick. No, she whispered, because he dropped them. Said he didn't want to ruin my life. The benevolent genius sparing the criminal ex. He destroyed me and still got to play the hero. Elias ran a hand through his hair, the composure cracking. That's not strategy. That's sadism. That's Nathan, Lila said bitterly. And now he's your business partner. So tell me, Elias, what are you going to do about it? He looked at her for a long moment, too long. Then, slowly, he stood and extended his hand. I'm going to find out the truth, he said simply. And when I do, I'll make sure Nathan Chen pays for what he did to you. The words should have brought relief, but all Lila felt was the weary ache of disbelief. Men like Nathan didn't fall. Men like Elias didn't sacrifice profit for justice. Yet when she looked at him, really looked, she saw something dangerous flicker behind his certainty. Something that looked like conviction. And for the first time in years, she felt something she thought Nathan had buried with her past. Hope. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Why? She asked softly. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Elias didn't answer right away. His eyes held hers, steady and unguarded. Because I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who wanted something from me, he said finally. And yesterday I met someone who didn't. You weren't trying to impress me, Lila. You were just kind to my mother. No agenda, no angle, just grace. He brushed his thumb lightly across her knuckles, a small disarming touch that made her breath catch. And because Nathan just lied to my face about you, he added, voice hardening, which means your story is true, and his entire empire is built on lies. Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. What if you're wrong? She whispered. What if I'm the liar? Elias smiled, slow, sure, devastating. Then I guess I'm about to make a very expensive mistake. But my gut says otherwise. He turned, still holding her hand, leading her down the library steps. Where are we going? She asked, half breathless. To my office, he said. I want to show you something. Elias, I can't. People will see. Your reputation. He looked over his shoulder, his gaze calm but fierce. Lila. And somehow, the way he said her name made her believe, just for a heartbeat, that maybe this time she wouldn't have to run. He turned to face her in the autumn light, and for the first time in years, someone looked at Lila Rowe not as a liability, but as the key to bringing a corrupt empire to its knees. Elias Voss wasn't a man chasing reputation or profit. He was chasing truth. And he'd just decided that the truth about Nathan Chen might be worth burning everything for. Because when a billionaire decides to hunt a liar, the fallout doesn't end in headlines, it ends in blood. Elias stopped mid-stride and turned to face her fully. The breeze tugged at his coat as his voice dropped low, steady, unshakable. I don't care about my reputation, he said. I care about the truth. And I have a feeling the truth about Nathan Chen is going to be very, very interesting. They continued walking across the campus, past glass buildings that mirrored their reflections back at them. The Billionaire and the Waitress, a pairing that shouldn't exist. Yet somehow it did. and for the first time in 2 years, Lila didn't feel like the broken remnant of someone else's ambition. She felt like someone worth believing in. Elias's office towered above Midtown, an obsidian monolith of glass and steel. The elevator opened to the top floor, an entire world of quiet power and impossible wealth. Assistants in tailored suits glided through the reception area, their shoes silent against marble floors. Everything, the art, the furniture, even the scent in the air, whispered old money and perfect control. "Mr. Voss," his assistant said, standing quickly. Her professional smile faltered when she saw Lila. "You weren't scheduled to be in today." "Change of plans," Elias replied smoothly. "Hold my calls for the next hour." He paused at the door. "And Caroline, complete confidentiality on this meeting." "Yes, sir." As they passed, Lila felt the weight of Caroline's curiosity pressing against her back. Her black dress suddenly felt too plain, too small for a place like this. Inside, the office was everything she expected and nothing she'd imagined. Dark wood, glass walls, city skylines stretched like a promise. It was a man's world, powerful but not cold. "Drink?" Elias asked, moving toward a bar stocked with bottles worth more than her monthly rent. "I'm fine," she said quietly, staying near the door. Her heart raced. "Why did you bring me here, Elias? Even if everything I've told you is true, Nathan's still your business partner." "You think that stops me?" He poured himself a small glass of amber liquid. "If Nathan Chen built his empire on theft, then he's not the kind of man I want beside me." "But the money?" "There's always more money," Elias interrupted. He sank into the leather chair opposite his desk and gestured for her to sit. "There isn't always another chance to do the right thing." Lila sat gingerly, her body tight with nerves. "You say that now. But when the numbers start talking, when your board demands answers—" "My board works for me," Elias said evenly, beneath the calm steel threaded every syllable. "And numbers don't matter when they're built on fraud." He leaned forward, eyes catching the city light. "Tell me about the patents, Lila. Nathan's company has filed 17 in the past 2 years, all tied to algorithmic trading and financial modeling. How many of those did you design?" Her breath caught. "How did you—" "Because I've already been reviewing Pinnacle's records," he said, pulling up a tablet. "The timing doesn't add up. 17 filings in 6 months? From a man whose background doesn't include a single advanced modeling credential? I've done my research. Nathan Chen doesn't have the technical skill to build any of this." The room seemed to tilt. "You investigated him?" "I investigate everyone I work with," he said gently. "But you weren't in any of the company records." "Not once. If you co-founded Pinnacle, if you built these systems, where's your name?" Lila's throat tightened. Her voice came out as a whisper. "He erased me. After he accused me of theft, after the charges were dropped, he rewrote everything. Contracts, incorporation documents, even the patent filings. He scrubbed me out of my own legacy." Elias's fingers steepled beneath his chin. "That's not just unethical, that's criminal." "Good luck proving it," Lila murmured. "Nathan's lawyers make miracles out of corruption." "So do mine," he said simply, reaching for his phone. "Caroline, get me Charles Morrison at Morrison & Webb. Tell him it's urgent." "Elias, no." She stood, panic surging. "You'll destroy your deal." "Good." His voice was flat, final. "If the deal's built on stolen work, it deserves to burn." "You don't understand what you're risking." Elias stood too, his presence filling the room. Lila, I could lose this deal and 10 more like it and still live comfortably, but I can't afford to lose my integrity. The words hit her harder than any kindness had in years. Integrity. She'd forgotten what it sounded like. Why? She asked softly. Why do this for me? Elias took a slow step closer. The space between them shrank until she could smell the faint warmth of his cologne. His eyes, that rare shade of silver gray, softened, almost painfully sincere. Because yesterday you could have ignored my mother, he said quietly. You could have smiled, walked away, and stayed invisible. But instead, you treated her like she mattered. You listened. He paused, his voice dropping low, intimate. Because you speak 5 languages, but serve wine for tips. Because you hold an MBA from Columbia, but worry about losing your job. Because everything about you tells me the world tried to erase you, and you survived anyway. Lila blinked back tears. You're going to regret this when the lawyers come. When Nathan fights back. When your board demands answers. Elias's jaw tightened, his eyes unwavering. Let me worry about Nathan Chen. When his hand brushed her cheek, it wasn't a romantic gesture, it was a challenge. The question wasn't whether Lila Rowe could survive anymore. It was whether she was ready to fight back. In a single moment, the man who'd once been a stranger became her ally, her weapon, and her risk, all at once. Because when Elias Voss promised justice, Lila knew one truth. Men like Nathan Chen didn't lose easily, and they never lost quietly. Elias reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, but she didn't. His thumb brushed away a tear, the touch feather light, reverent, grounding. The question is, he murmured, are you ready to fight back? Lila's breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to tell him she'd forgotten how. I don't know how anymore, she whispered. He took everything, Elias. My work, my name, my confidence. I don't even know who I am without all of it. I do, he said simply. His other hand rose, framing her face, steady and warm. You're the woman who built a company from nothing. The mind Nathan Chen had to steal from to succeed. The person who lost everything and still had the grace to treat my mother like she mattered. His thumbs traced gently along her cheekbones, and something inside Lila cracked. Something that had been frozen for 2 long years. You're someone worth fighting for, Lila Rowe, he said softly. The only question is, do you believe that? She stared at him, this impossible man, willing to risk millions for a woman he'd known for 48 hours. It made no sense, the timing, the chaos, the pull. And yet, for the first time in years, she felt like herself again, sharp, capable, and alive. I want to, she whispered, then let me prove it. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Elias glanced down, and the warmth in his expression hardened into something colder. What is it? She asked. Text from Nathan, he said, his voice tightening. He wants to move up our meeting to Monday. Says he has exciting new developments. Lila felt her stomach twist. Elias, you have to be careful. If he even suspects. He won't, Elias cut in. As far as Nathan Chen knows, I'm just another greedy investor chasing profit margins. A sharp, dangerous smile curved his lips, a smile that wasn't about charm, but strategy. He has no idea what's coming. Lila wanted to warn him again, to explain that Nathan wasn't just ruthless, he was surgical. But the look in Elias's eyes stopped her. Determination, loyalty, fire. It reminded her of something she'd lost, what it felt like to have someone in her corner. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. I need you to trust me. The word trust burned through her chest. Nathan had weaponized that word. He'd used it to cage her, to control her, to destroy her. But looking into Elias's gray eyes, Lila felt something she hadn't in 2 years, the tentative spark of faith. "Yes," she said softly, "I can do that." Elias's smile was like sunrise breaking through the storm. "Good." Because on Monday morning, Nathan Chen is going to learn that his past finally caught up with him. When he pulled her into his arms, Lila didn't resist. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that justice might still exist. And even if it didn't, at least this time, she wouldn't face the war alone. For 2 years, Lila Rowe had been running. Now she was standing still, ready to fight. The sky over Manhattan was the same muted gray as her nerves. Lila sat in the corner booth of a coffee shop across from Voss Tower, watching the entrance through rain-streaked glass. Elias had insisted she stay away from the meeting, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Her phone buzzed. "Meeting starts in 10 minutes. Whatever happens, Nathan doesn't know you're involved. Stay safe." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Be careful, he's more dangerous than you think." The reply came instantly. "I know, but so am I." Lila exhaled shakily, staring at the message. She wanted to believe him. But she knew Nathan Chen too well, his charm, his precision, the way he could twist any truth until it fit his story. 43 floors above her, Elias Voss was walking into the lion's den, and Nathan Chen, the man who'd destroyed her life, was about to show just how far he'd go to protect his empire. Elias straightened his tie, catching his reflection in the glass walls of the conference room. Calm, controlled. Every detail had to be perfect, the expression, the tone, the questions. Nothing could reveal what this really was. A trap dressed as a meeting. "Mr. Voss," came Caroline's voice over the intercom. "Mr. Chen has arrived." Elias's jaw tightened. "Send him in." The glass doors swung open, and Nathan Chen entered like a man who owned every inch of the floor beneath him. He was shorter than Elias remembered, but carried himself with the swagger of someone who'd never heard the word no. His black hair was immaculate, his suit impeccable, his smile effortless, until you looked into his eyes and saw the ambition burning cold behind them. "Elias!" Nathan's voice was silk. He extended his hand. "Appreciate you moving this up. I know your schedule's brutal." Elias accepted the handshake, studying the manicured nails, the perfectly timed confidence. "Not a problem," he said, smiling back. "Always happy to make time for partners." Nathan gestured toward the table. "Coffee, if you don't mind. I wanted to talk about accelerating the merger. My team found some additional assets, proprietary algorithms we've been developing in-house. Could cut 6 weeks off our timeline." Elias poured the coffee from the silver carafe, his movements smooth, unhurried. "Additional assets?" he echoed. "Intellectual property," Nathan said easily. "Algorithmic models, predictive systems, revolutionary stuff. I wanted to run it by you before we loop in." The lawyer's Elias handed him the cup, then settled into his chair, hiding the coiled tension under a mask of polite interest. "Tell me more about these algorithms. Are they related to the risk assessment protocols you mentioned last month?" Nathan's grin widened. "Exactly. Predictive modeling that can forecast market patterns up to 18 months in advance. It's going to change the entire industry. Impressive," Elias said. "Your team developed these in-house?" "Absolutely. My lead researcher is brilliant. PhD from MIT, 10 years in quant analysis. We've been working on this tech for over 3 years." Elias made a note on his legal pad, keeping his expression neutral. And this researcher, they're on board with the merger? No intellectual property concerns, patent disputes, anything like that? Nathan's response was instantaneous, practiced. None at all. My legal team's been meticulous, all work done under company contracts, clean development chain. The lies rolled out of him effortlessly. Elias felt a quiet, seething rage stir in his chest. Lila had been right. Nathan was a craftsman of deceit, rewriting history with the calm precision of a surgeon. "That's excellent," Elias said smoothly. "You know how important clean IP chains are in deals this size." He set down his pen and leaned back. "But 3 years of development, that's a serious investment. How did you fund it?" Nathan's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. "Private investors initially. Then we reinvested profits as the models started performing smart," Elias said, voice mild. "And your lead researcher, this MIT genius, has been with you the whole time?" "Oh, longer," Nathan said, confidence returning. "We've built something truly special together." Elias's stomach turned. The ease with which Nathan spoke, erasing Lila entirely, was breathtaking in its cruelty. "I'd love to meet this researcher," Elias said casually. Nathan hesitated, barely. "Unfortunately, he's in Singapore right now, overseeing implementation." "Brilliant, but not much for meetings." "Of course," Elias replied. "When he returns, I'd appreciate an introduction." He reached for his coffee, using the movement to watch Nathan's expression. "In the meantime, I'd like to review the documentation, development history, methodology, testing protocols. My team will need a full picture before we finalize." "Of course," Nathan's fingers flew across his phone. "I'll have my assistant send it by the end of the week." Elias nodded. "Perfect. I appreciate your transparency, Nathan. Trust is the foundation of any good partnership." "Absolutely," Nathan said, smiling brightly. "Honesty in business isn't just ethical, it's profitable. Lies have a way of catching up with you." The irony hit so hard Elias almost laughed. Couldn't agree more. For the next half hour, Nathan painted his illusion. Profits, projections, exponential growth, all built on stolen genius. When he finally left, his handshake was confident, his charm intact, his lies polished to perfection. Elias waited until the elevator doors sealed before taking out his phone. "Call Charles Morrison." Now Lila was on her 3rd cup of coffee when her phone rang. Elias's name lit up the screen. Her pulse jumped. "How did it go?" she asked. "Exactly like you said," Elias replied. "He lied about everything. The research, the funding, the development team. And you. He's claiming his lead researcher is a man with a PhD from MIT. Lila let out a dry laugh. "Singapore, right?" Elias paused. "Yes, how did you know?" "It's his favorite cover story," she said bitterly. "When he doesn't want someone found, he sends them to Singapore." Elias exhaled slowly, disgust edging his voice. "Lila, I've dealt with ruthless people before, but the way he erased you, it's sociopathic." "I tried to warn you." "You did," he said quietly. "And you were right." There was a long silence between them. When Elias spoke again, his tone had softened. "How are you holding up?" Lila looked out the window at the blur of commuters. People living lives untouched by corruption or betrayal. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she murmured. "Nathan doesn't make mistakes. If he's lying this easily, it's because he thinks he's already won." Lila Rowe knew Nathan Chen was dangerous, but as she sat clutching her phone, she realized something worse. He was predictable, and that made him even more lethal. Across the city, Elias Voss was trying to stay one move ahead of a man who'd made a career out of anticipating every threat before it happened. Because when you go to war with someone who plays chess in blood and contracts, the first mistake you make might be your last. "What do you mean?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean he's planning something," Elias said. "Nathan doesn't react to threats. He eliminates them, quietly, efficiently." Before they ever reach him, a chill rippled through her that had nothing to do with the rain outside. "Elias, what if he knows? What if this whole thing is a trap?" "That's impossible," he said. "There's no way he could know we've been in contact." "Are you sure?" she pressed. "Think about it. You asked about someone from Columbia, a linguistics grad who claims to know him, and then 3 days later, you're suddenly questioning his IP and development history? That's not a coincidence." Silence, then quietly, "You think he's made the connection." "I think Nathan Chen doesn't believe in coincidences," Layla said. Elias's voice dropped an octave, rough with worry. "Where are you right now?" "Coffee shop across from your building. Get out of there." "Now what? Why?" "Because if you're right, and he's figured out who you are, you're not safe. He already destroyed your life once when you were just an inconvenience. What do you think he'll do if he sees you as a threat?" Ice spread through her chest. She'd been so focused on justice, on hope, that she hadn't let herself remember what Nathan did to protect his empire. Nathan didn't leave loose ends. He cut them clean. "Elias," she whispered, "I should disappear. Tonight, leave the city. New name, new state." "No." His voice was firm, unshakable. "Running didn't save you last time, and it won't save you now. He'll just find you again. And next time, you won't have anyone watching your back." "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest," Elias said, "we force his hand. Make him come to us, on our terms." Her fingers clenched around the phone. "That's suicide. You don't understand what I'm capable of." His tone carried that same terrifying calm that only the powerful could wield. "I didn't build a billion-dollar company by backing down from predators." He hesitated, then said quietly, "And I sure as hell am not letting Nathan Chen hurt the woman I—" "The woman you what?" she whispered. Elias's voice softened. "The woman I care about. More than I probably should after 3 days. But there it is." Tears stung Lila's eyes. "Elias, that's insane. You barely know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know you're brilliant, that you're kind, that you're stronger than you think. And I know you deserve justice. I also know I want to be the one standing beside you when you get it." Her throat tightened. "And if we fail, then we fail together. But I'm not letting him touch you again." For the first time in years, someone's voice didn't sound like pity. It sounded like promise. "What if we can't prove it?" she asked. "What if his lawyers bury us alive?" "Then we fight until they can't," he said simply. "But first, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" That word, trust, the one Nathan had twisted until it meant surrender. She'd sworn never to give it to anyone again, but sitting there, hearing Elias's voice steady and certain, Lila realized maybe trust wasn't about safety. Maybe it was about choosing someone who was worth the risk. "Yes," she said softly, "I trust you." Elias exhaled, relief breaking through his composure. "Good, because I have a plan." 20 minutes later, Lila sat across from him in his office, listening as Elias laid out something that sounded halfway between genius and madness. "You want me to call him?" she said, incredulous. "That's exactly what he's expecting." He's already preparing to use anything I say against me. That's what makes it perfect, Elias replied, pacing behind his desk. His energy radiated power and precision. He expects you to hide, to keep letting other people fight your battles. What he won't expect is you walking straight into his office as his equal. That's not bravery, that's suicide. It's strategy, Elias said, his eyes sharp. For 2 years, you've been letting him control the story. It's time you took it back. Lila felt something spark inside her, a wild mix of terror and something dangerously close to courage. Even if I wanted to, what would be the point? He'll just twist it. He always does, not if you're not going alone. She blinked. What are you talking about? Elias grabbed his phone. I'm calling Nathan. I'll tell him my team found inconsistencies in his IP documentation, that I need to meet with his lead researcher to clarify things. He'll make excuses. Then I'll make it clear that the merger depends on it, Elias said, his smile turning razor sharp. Nathan won't risk losing billions over a meeting. Lila's pulse thundered. And then what? Then, he said, you walk in as Dr. Lila Rowe, independent consultant in algorithmic systems, the expert I've hired to verify his IP claims. Her breath caught. He'll recognize me immediately. Good, Elias said. That's the point. You showing up alive, confident, unbroken. That's what will shake him. He thrives in control. Take that away, and he'll make mistakes. Lila hesitated. The thought of seeing Nathan again made her stomach twist. What if he refuses, or calls security, or worse? On what grounds? Elias countered. You're a professional attending a business meeting. You were never charged with anything, Lila. His power over you only exists because you still believe he has it. He stepped around the desk, stopping close enough that she could feel his presence. His hands settled gently on her shoulders. I know you're scared, he said quietly. And I know the last time you trusted someone, it broke you. But this time is different. How? She whispered. Because this time, Elias said, you're not alone. This time you have someone who believes you, someone who's ready to fight for you. Lila looked up, and for a moment the office disappeared. There was only him, not pity, not obligation, just fierce, steady belief. And for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel like a ghost of her past. She felt like a woman with something to fight for, and someone willing to fight beside her. The night before the reckoning, Lila Rowe stood on the edge of her old life, and for the first time, she didn't tremble. Tomorrow she wouldn't hide. Tomorrow she'd face the man who stole everything. Elias Voss had risked his company, his name, and his empire for her truth. But now both of them were walking into the lion's den, where one wrong move could destroy them both. Because when you confront a man like Nathan Chen, it's not just your career on the line, it's your life. What if we're wrong? Lila's voice was small, trembling between fear and belief. What if this destroys your company, your reputation, everything you've built? Elias cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing along her cheekbones. Then I'll rebuild, he said. But Lila, I can't rebuild my integrity if I walk away from this. I can't live with myself if I let Nathan Chen win. His voice softened, something fragile threading through the certainty. And I can't lose you now that I've found you. The words hung between them, electric and terrifying. Lila didn't know how to respond. She barely trusted her own heartbeat. But his sincerity, the calm conviction in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was more than her scars, It broke through the last of her defenses. "Okay," she whispered, "let's do it." Elias's smile unfurled like sunrise over a sleepless city. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified," she said, her chest tightening. "But yes, I'm sure." She drew in a deep breath, and something inside her shifted. The part of her that had lived in shadow stood taller. "It's time to stop running." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, steadying her trembling frame. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to draw strength from someone else, from his warmth, his faith, his belief that justice wasn't dead. Tomorrow, she'd face Nathan Chen for the first time in 2 years. Tomorrow, she would either reclaim her life or watch it crumble again. But tonight, as the city pulsed below them, Lila Rowe felt something she hadn't in a long time: belonging. The headquarters of Pinnacle Financial gleamed in the gray morning light, a tower of glass and arrogance slicing into the clouds. Lila stood across the street, clutching a cup of coffee that was already going cold. That building had once been her dream. Now it stood as the monument to her betrayal. Second thoughts? Elias's voice broke through the silence as he appeared beside her, 2 coffees in hand. "About 100, she admitted, accepting the cup. "I used to love this place," she murmured, staring up at the mirrored windows. "Nathan and I designed the floor plans ourselves. We used to talk about innovation and integrity, about building something that would change the world." "And you did," Elias said softly. "The fact that he stole the credit doesn't erase what you built." She looked at him, the impeccable suit, the quiet authority, the way he seemed to steady her without even trying. "Are you sure about this? Once we step inside, there's no going back." "I'm sure," he said. "The question is, are you?" Lila thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Confident, idealistic, convinced that talent was enough to protect her. Then she thought about the ghost she'd become. Cautious, muted, terrified of her own shadow. But standing beside Elias, feeling his unflinching belief in her, she realized she didn't want to be either of those versions anymore. "I'm ready," she said, and for the first time she meant it. They crossed the street together. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, grounding her. The lobby hadn't changed: marble floors, brushed steel, quiet money everywhere. The security guard looked up and immediately straightened. "Mr. Voss, good afternoon, sir." "Good afternoon, James," Elias replied smoothly. "We're here to see Nathan Chen." "He's expecting you," the guard said, glancing curiously at Lila. "Dr. Rowe," Elias added seamlessly. "Consulting on the merger, intellectual property verification." The guard nodded. "Of course, 32nd floor." As the elevator carried them upward, Lila's pulse raced in time with the numbers flashing on the panel: 20, 25, 30. "Breathe," Elias murmured, his hand finding hers. "You belong here. Remember that. This company exists because of you." When the doors slid open, the air was colder: glass, chrome, and ambition. Behind the reception desk sat a young woman Lila didn't recognize. Nathan had replaced everyone, erased every trace of her. "Mr. Voss," the receptionist said with a practiced smile. "Mr. Chen is waiting for you in the main conference room." They followed her down a corridor lined with framed magazine covers and award plaques, all bearing Nathan's name. Every step was like walking through a museum dedicated to her own erasure. And then the doors opened. There he was, Nathan Chen. Perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect smile. The same smile that had once convinced her she was safe. He stood at the head of the table, posture regal, charm weaponized. For a moment, the old fear surged, the reflex to shrink, to disappear. Then Elias's hand pressed gently against her back, steady and warm. "Elias," Nathan said smoothly, "right on time. And you must be Dr. Rowe." His gaze locked on hers, polite, unreadable, until recognition flashed in his eyes like lightning. His smile didn't falter, but the air in the room changed, and just like that, the war began. When Nathan Chen finally saw her face, time stopped. For 3 seconds, the mask slipped, and beneath the billionaire's charm, Lila Rowe saw it: fear. 2 years of silence shattered in an instant. The woman he'd erased had come back, not to beg, not to cry, but to take everything he'd stolen. Because when the ghost you buried walks back into your boardroom, the past stops being history and becomes a reckoning. For 3 full seconds, Nathan's expression went blank. Too long for someone in control. Lila saw it all flicker across his face: shock, calculation, and the smallest glint of fear. Then the mask snapped back into place. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone smooth, practiced. "Have we met? You look familiar?" The pretense hit her like a slap. The casual dismissal, the lie delivered so effortlessly it might as well have been truth. But instead of despair, something else ignited inside her. Rage pure, sharp, cleansing. 2 years of humiliation burned away in an instant, leaving nothing but fire. "We've met," Lila said quietly, walking forward with her chin high. "Though I'm not surprised you don't remember. You always were good at forgetting inconvenient people." Nathan's smile didn't waver, but his eyes tightened just enough to betray the effort. "I'm afraid I don't follow." "Dr. Lila Rowe," she said clearly, extending a hand that trembled only with fury. "Former partner and co-founder of Pinnacle Financial, though I imagine your current version of history has me conveniently deleted." The silence that followed was suffocating. Nathan stared at her hand like it might detonate, while Elias stood at the head of the table, calm and coiled, watching every flicker of emotion. "I think there's some confusion," Nathan said finally, refusing to shake her hand. "Pinnacle has never had a partner named Lila Rowe." "Really?" Lila pulled out her phone, scrolling to a folder she'd once promised herself she'd never open again. "Then maybe you can explain these." She turned the screen toward him, a photo of the two of them at Pinnacle's launch party, arms around each other, smiling like they owned the future. Nathan's gaze flicked to the photo, then back to her. His shrug was effortless. "I attend a lot of events. I've taken photos with hundreds of people." Lila swiped to the next image. The two of them in the office, late at night, side by side, her engagement ring glittering under the fluorescent lights. Then another, Nathan kissing her cheek at an intimate dinner. "Hundreds of people," she said softly. "Is that what I was to you, Nathan? Just another face in the crowd?" He exhaled sharply, the cracks in his composure widening. "I don't know what you're hoping to achieve here." He turned to Elias, all professionalism. "Mr. Voss, I'm not sure what this woman has told you, but—" "This woman," Elias interrupted, his tone low and lethal, "is Dr. Lila Rowe, the inventor behind the 17 technologies your company claims as its own. The same technologies you're trying to sell me as part of this merger." Nathan froze. Real fear flashed across his face before he caught it. "That's impossible. Pinnacle's IP was developed internally by my team." "Your team," Lila repeated, stepping closer. You mean your imaginary MIT PhD conveniently in Singapore? The ghost researcher who somehow wrote my code? Nathan's voice sharpened. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing. I'm not playing anymore, Lila cut in, her voice steady and cold. I'm here to collect what you stole from me. Nathan laughed, brittle and false. Stole? That's a serious accusation. Yes, Lila said, pulling out her tablet. It is. She tapped the screen. These are my original development notes for the risk assessment algorithm, written in my hand, dated 6 months before you filed the patent. Or if you prefer, I can show you the emails where you asked me to explain the technical specifications, because you couldn't understand the code. Nathan's composure began to fracture. Anyone can forge documents. Anyone can, she agreed, but these aren't forgeries. They're backups from my private cloud, metadata intact, timestamps, device signatures, GPS logs. Would you like to explain, Nathan, why your company's foundation was written on my laptop? This is ridiculous, Nathan snapped, turning to Elias. You can't actually believe this. Former employee? Lila's voice sliced through his words. Is that what I am now? We were engaged for 2 years, Nathan. We built Pinnacle together. We shared a home, a life, dreams. And when you decided you wanted it all for yourself, you didn't just steal my work, you destroyed me. Her voice rose, fueled by 2 years of silence finally breaking free. You froze my accounts, filed false fraud charges, then dropped them just in time to make yourself look merciful, so everyone would still believe I was guilty. You rewrote contracts, erased my name from patents, and built an empire on my ashes. Nathan's face was pale now, his charm stripped away. Even if any of that were true, it is true, Elias said quietly, his voice like a blade sliding from its sheath. Nathan turned toward him. You actually believe her? Elias, this woman is unstable. She's telling the truth, Elias said, pulling out his own tablet. Because my legal team has been investigating Pinnacle's IP for the past 3 days. And guess what we found? Nathan went utterly still. The original patent applications, Elias continued, with 2 inventors listed. Metadata proves they were altered, names changed, invention dates shifted, technical details rewritten to hide that the work came from an external source. Elias's tone hardened. Your source. He stood, his presence commanding the room. We also found the original partnership agreements, the ones that name Dr. Lila Rowe as an equal partner, not an employee, the ones you had rewritten 6 months after she disappeared. Nathan's mouth tightened. Those are sealed documents. You had no legal right. I have every legal right, Elias said, his words slicing through the air. Because I don't buy stolen property. And right now that's exactly what you're trying to sell me. Nathan's composure cracked. You're talking about destroying a billion-dollar deal based on the word of. A woman who created the technology that built your empire. Lila's voice cut him off. A woman who trusted you and paid the price? Nathan looked trapped, the charm gone, the predator caged. His voice dropped, slick with desperation. Lila, maybe we can work something out. She stepped closer, her voice like glass. You already did. 2 years ago, when you took everything. And this time she didn't sound broken. She sounded like justice. 2 years ago, Nathan Chen took everything from her. Her work, her name, her future. Now, standing across from him in the boardroom, he built on her genius. Lila Rowe finally took it all back. Elias Voss ended the deal with one sentence. Lila ended Nathan with the truth. And together they burned down the empire built on her silence. Because revenge isn't about rage, it's about balance. And today, the scales finally tipped. If you feel like you deserve some form of compensation. Lila's bitter laugh cut through Nathan's words like broken glass. Compensation? She repeated. You don't get to negotiate your way out of theft, Nathan. You don't get to buy back a conscience. His jaw flexed. Then what do you want? She studied him, the man who'd once held her heart and her future in the same hands, now exposed as the thief who'd stolen both. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, deadly calm. I want justice, she said simply. I want the world to know who really built Pinnacle Financial. I want my name restored on every patent, every paper, every innovation you claimed as your own. I want a full accounting of every dollar your company made off my work. Then her voice softened, not with mercy, but precision. And I want you to feel what I felt. To lose everything because someone you trusted decided you didn't matter. Nathan stared at her, stunned into silence. The mask had fallen completely now, revealing not power but panic. For the first time in years, Lila saw him for what he was. Small. The deal's off, Elias said quietly, rising from his chair. Effective immediately, and Nathan, his tone turned lethal. I'll make sure every investor and partner in this city knows exactly what kind of man they've been dealing with. Nathan shot to his feet, composure shattering. You can't do this. The contracts are void, Elias cut in smoothly. Misrepresentation of assets, falsified IP filings, fraudulent disclosures. My lawyers are already filing the termination paperwork. I'll fight this, Nathan snapped, his voice shaking with rage. I'll destroy both of you. You'll what? Lila said, standing to face him. Her voice didn't tremble this time. Ruin my reputation, steal my work, turn everyone against me. You already did all of that. And I'm still here. She stepped closer until she could see the fear flicker in his eyes. But this time, Nathan, I'm not alone. Elias stood beside her, silent but unmovable. This time, she said, her voice rising like a vow, I have someone who believes me, someone who fights back. And this time, you're the one who loses everything. Nathan's gaze darted between them, his expression a storm of fury, denial, and something that looked dangerously close to defeat. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, Lila said softly. It is. As they turned and walked out, leaving him alone in the wreckage of his empire, a weight lifted from her chest, 2 years of fear, shame, and silence dissolving into something she hadn't felt in forever. Freedom. She wasn't the ghost who had fled this building in disgrace. She was the woman who'd built it and now rebuilt herself. Justice wasn't abstract anymore. It was real. And she'd earned it. By morning, the story had gone global. Voss Industries shares slid 9% before noon. Elias didn't flinch when the board called for his resignation. Let them, he said, it's the price of telling the truth. Lila watched the footage alone that night, his calm, his ruin, his choice. For the first time, she realized love wasn't rescue, it was risk. Sunlight spilled across the skyline, painting Manhattan in gold. Lila stood barefoot in the kitchen of Elias's Tribeca penthouse, watching the day break over the city that had once broken her. The newspaper on the counter made her smile every time she saw it. Pinnacle Financial founder sentenced to 5 years for corporate fraud. Below it, a smaller headline, Rowe Innovations. Reports record profits in first quarter. Still reading about him. Elias teased gently, stepping behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Can you blame me? Lila smiled. 2 years of nightmares, and now he's the one in an orange jumpsuit. Elias pressed a kiss to her neck. Believe it. Morrison's legal team was relentless. Fraud, IP theft, falsified records. He won't be seeing daylight as a free man anytime soon. She turned in his arms, meeting the eyes of the man who'd changed everything. Any regrets, walking away from the biggest deal of your career? He smiled, not the corporate grin she'd first known, but something warm, real. Walking away from that deal was the best move I ever made. It led me to something more valuable. Her lips curved. And what's that? You, he said simply, then kissed her forehead, though watching you rebuild your company from the ground up was a close second. Lila laughed softly, her chest tightening with emotion. The past 6 months had been a blur of court battles, patent restorations, and sleepless nights rebuilding her company. Her company. Rowe Innovations was now worth more than Pinnacle had ever been, because this time every inch of it was hers. We're going to change the industry, she said, smiling. Elias grinned. You've already changed it. You just needed someone to remind you who you were. She leaned into him, the city glowing outside their window. Even after 6 months, sometimes she still woke, expecting the nightmare to return. But it never did, because she'd stopped running. And she'd learned that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about rebuilding anyway. I have something for you, Elias said suddenly, a trace of nervousness in his voice. It's not my birthday, she teased. I know, he said, reaching into his pocket. But there's something I've wanted to ask you, and I can't wait any longer. Her breath caught as he dropped to one knee, right there in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the marble floor. Lila Rowe, he said, voice steady and full of quiet wonder. Will you marry me? 6 months ago, she walked into his life to expose corruption and ended up rewriting what love, justice, and redemption really meant. Now, with the city bathed in morning gold, Lila Rowe and Elias Voss stood at the crossroads of everything they'd fought for, proof that the right kind of partnership can rebuild what betrayal tried to destroy. Because sometimes the real revenge isn't watching them lose, it's learning how to win differently. 6 months ago, Elias said softly, you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You reminded me why integrity matters more than profit, why truth is worth fighting for, and why love might just be the most important investment anyone can make. He opened the velvet box, and the light caught the ring inside. Simple, elegant, timeless. Exactly what Lila would have chosen for herself. You've taught me that real strength isn't about never falling, Elias continued, his gray eyes glinting with emotion. It's about standing back up, wiser, braver, and better than before. You showed me that doing the right thing isn't about winning. It's about becoming the kind of person who deserves to. He drew a breath, his voice dropping into something intimate. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy, but Lila, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Lila's breath caught as he looked up at her. I love you, he said simply. Your mind, your courage, your chaos. The way you sign to my mother, the way you challenge me, the way you make terrible coffee but somehow make my mornings better anyway. You make me want to be the kind of man who earns a woman like you." Tears filled her eyes, not from pain this time, but from everything she'd finally let herself feel. "Lila Rowe," Elias said, his voice steady, despite the emotion trembling beneath it. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that not all partnerships end in betrayal, that love doesn't have to be dangerous?" Lila stared at him, this impossible man who'd risked everything to stand beside her, who had seen her broken and believed in her anyway. The ring caught the light, scattering tiny rainbows across the marble floor. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, stronger. "Yes, Elias. Yes to all of it." He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that didn't shake once, and when he stood, she kissed him, soft, certain, unstoppable. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing through tears. "I can't believe you proposed to me in your kitchen," she said, glancing around at the space that had seen their plans, their late-night debates, their shared victories. Elias smiled. "I couldn't wait for some fancy rooftop or champagne toast. I wanted to ask you here, where we rebuilt everything." Lila looked around, realizing he was right. This wasn't just a kitchen anymore. It was the war room, the sanctuary, the place where trust had been reborn. "Simple and honest," she said quietly. "That's us." "Exactly." He pulled her close again, and for the first time, she didn't brace for loss. A year ago, she'd been a ghost in a borrowed apartment, hiding from a past that had stolen her name. Now she stood in the sunlight, engaged to a man who had proven that love didn't have to take power from her to feel real. "So," Elias said teasingly, "how do you feel about wedding planning? And please tell me you're not about to design $1 million production." Lila laughed, bright and unguarded. "Something small. Family, close friends, and your mother, of course. She still wants to teach me more sign language before the ceremony." "She's going to be thrilled," Elias said, his grin widening. "She's been dropping hints about grandkids since our third date." "Grandkids?" Lila raised an eyebrow. "We just got engaged, and you're already planning the sequel?" "I'm thinking about everything," he said, half serious, half smiling. "The messy, beautiful future. The kind you build one honest day at a time." His tone softened. "I know trust doesn't come easy for you, Lila. But whatever comes next, we face it together." Her chest tightened with something fierce and warm. "I know," she said quietly, "and I trust you. Completely." The words that once terrified her now felt like freedom. Trust wasn't about never being hurt again. It was about believing that some people were worth the risk, and Elias Voss was worth everything. "Good," he said, kissing her forehead, "because I have some ideas for our honeymoon that require a lot of trust." "Oh?" Lila smirked. "What kind of ideas?" "The kind that involve Paris, champagne, and showing you that not every French connection ends in heartbreak." For a moment, the mention of Paris flickered like a shadow. But this time it didn't sting. It was just a city now, not a scar. "Paris sounds perfect," she said, smiling, "as long as you promise not to propose again." "Deal," Elias said, his grin turning secretive. "But I can't promise not to surprise you." "What kind of surprise?" "You'll just have to trust me." "I do," she said, and for once she truly did. The city outside their window pulsed like a heartbeat, relentless, alive, forgiving nothing and no one. Yet here she stood, hand in his, proof that even the broken can rebuild something unshakable. Lila Rowe had reclaimed her name, her power, and the silence Nathan once used to bury her. But as the dawn washed over Manhattan, she realized revenge was never about destruction. It was about resurrection. And as Elias kissed her forehead, the woman who once vanished into shadows finally stepped into the light, unaware that somewhere another empire was already learning her name. If you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ruins, stay a while. The next reckoning is closer than you think.